Anthony,
Okay.
I loved your movie.
Oh my
The first
gosh.
time I saw it brought me to tears. The second time I saw it brought me to more tears. And
Wow.
it's a sign of good art that you can see it for a second time and you're getting more of the layers. And I want to see this movie a third and a fourth and a fifth because that's the sign of good art. There's always more to it. And you're a really fine storyteller. Tell
Mm.
our audience here what inspired you to make a film about Maximilian Kolbe, and particularly the 10 days in the starvation, or what is it, 14 days?
Yeah, 14 days. Yeah.
14 days in the starvation bunker. That's where you zoom in. That's what this movie is about. That's the journey we go through. What inspired it?
Yeah, I am so grateful that you took the time to watch it and for the great way that you received the film. I think for me, there was uh, I went through a great time of suffering, a time of very profound suffering during my late 20s. I had graduated from seminary, was going on my course towards marriage with this girl that I had fallen deeply in love with, and I uh, became ill with a illness that nobody could really figure out. Later turned out about a decade later, it turned out that it was a mold infection. But
Oh,
at the
my
time, it was
word.
just one of these sort of things that nobody could diagnose. And during that time, it caused chronic insomnia. I could only sleep about like 2 hours a night, and I would wake up with these from nightmares with these just like profound and very intense panic attacks every night, and it really was like a living hell to kind of live in it. And I really couldn't do much. My relationship unraveled. I couldn't pursue my career that I'd built for doing the whole Catholic speaker thing and doing the music thing. And ultimately, I really had to just live a very quiet um, and rather invisible life as I convalesced. And it was the discovery of certain things about St. Maximilian Kolbe, and particularly the last 10 days of his life, while I was doing a freelance project, like a freelance writing project, that really, I think, opened me up again to faith through a new, I guess, vision of his story. uh, the details that I'm speaking up about particularly here are specifically that he was still, not only that he stayed alive for 14 days without food or water inside of the starvation bunker, causing enough trouble for the Nazis to go ahead and just execute him, but that there were three other men who also survived that long with him. And from my vantage point, from the place that I was sitting as someone who had really lost hope and who was really asking the question, why live? Could there really be any reason to stay alive if the rest of my life is going to be like this and nobody gives me a diagnosis or helps me solve it? Um, and I think if I put myself in the shoes of those other men, that would be the same question. I feel like that would be the most natural thing to be asking.
Yeah.
And so to be thrown into this cell with a man who volunteered to be there, I was a priest who, in some ways, is trying to be a priest there and pastor them. Um, what would he have to say or do that could break through to me? And
Wow.
that sort of propelled me into this Lectio Divina, extended, I guess, Ignatian meditation on what it might have been like to be in the cell. Every time I would wake up, I would sort of place myself there one more time again in the midst of my own kind of terror and pain and grief, and simply have conversations with Maximilian Kolbe that ultimately kind of led to a script and that led to the making of the film.
I don't want to brush by this that, you've just opened your heart to us very vulnerably in an all-out human crisis of suffering.
Hmm.
How long ago was that in your life? You said it. How old were you when that was going on?
I was about 25 years old, 26 years old. So that was back in I don't want to date myself now, but it was about 8 years ago, 9 years ago. Yeah.
Okay, so you're mid to late 30s now,
Hmm.
and you are in an was it a crisis of your faith? Had you questioned the existence of God? You're at the bottom of the barrel in your human
Yeah.
existence, it sounds like.
No, I spent 2 years during that time as a professed atheist. I didn't share that with everybody that was in my life, and I'd been kind of a public Catholic, was doing youth ministry and all that, but sort of secretly to the people around me, I was very sarcastic and brutal, like angry atheist. I'm sure that
Yeah,
you come across many of them.
yeah.
Um, I think for me it was just I was I was trying to lash out against a faith that seemed like it had abandoned me, and a God that I felt like had abandoned me at that time.
So you are living, whether you know it or not, you're in the midst of Psalm 22. My God, why have you abandoned me? And in those moments in our lives, again, we don't tend to think of it, we don't tend to know it, but there's this profound paradox that if Jesus Christ is God, and if he is with us in our cry of abandonment, feeling abandoned by God, that's what, my God, why have you abandoned me? If God is with us, if Christ is God and Christ is with us in that cry of abandonment, then in the moments we feel most abandoned by God, in a crazy paradox, we are most intimately united with Jesus when we are honest enough to cry out, my God, why have you abandoned me? Where do you go from that place of feeling angry, abandoned, to reaching out to St. Maximilian Kolbe? And how do you form a connection with Maximilian Kolbe in this abject suffering?
Yeah, there's actually a scene in the movie where this particular paradox is really spoken of, where Colby talks about it with a prisoner inside of the cell as he's trying to comfort him. Um, and I think that the mystery that you're talking about, the paradox of God being with us because God himself was abandoned or felt abandoned by God. Um, I I think that during this season of my life, I had a plan for committing suicide, and was like just at that I guess fork in the road, and there was something about this story of Colby volunteering to join the 9 other men, which is something that I had never really thought about. I always thought about him volunteering to save the life of another man, and
Yes,
that was sort of the way that the story ended, in at least in kind of pop
right.
Catholic culture. Um, but when I started to see it from the perspective of almost maybe that was like a side that was a side benefit of this descent into hell that he was volunteering to take on, to be a priest and a father to these other men who were there. Um, when I began to see it that way, I started to see the incarnation that way too. That God somehow um, was descending into my
Mm.
suffering in order to rescue me from from the despair, from the I guess the terror that I was living in, just by his very presence. And I think that Colby's story just began to reframe who God was to me by sharing how close God can be in the midst of trial and
Mm.
darkness.
How do you go from relating to this story, having a point of connection with this story in your own hell, to saying, I want to write a film about this and make it and direct it? I mean, I love movies. I've been a movie fan since I was a little kid. Um, Movies have been like journey partners with me throughout my life. I can't make sense of my own life story without these stories from movies that have spoken to me so profoundly. So I have a certain fascination with how movies are made. Like, how do you say, I want to write a movie
Yeah.
about Maximilian Kolbe and then do it? It is how many years of your life did you devote to this?
Yeah, I mean, that all started, right, like 8 years ago. So and there wasn't really a start to the project. Like, the start to the project was the meditations in my room,
Yes.
in the dark night of my soul. And I think the best art really is the kind of art that's made out of a a sort of need, the artist's need to do it. I think when people ask me, "Oh, I want to be a filmmaker. If I want to be a writer, I want to do something like this," and I tell them, like, don't do it unless it will kill you to not do it.
Yes.
'Cause
Yes.
it's going to kill you to do it, and you have to realize the way the scales have to be balanced in order for you to make it through that journey. And I think for me, um, I was writing. I always write. I'm a writer. That's just sort of how I am. So I write poetry. I write short stories. I write scripts, and I think that writing a script is, for me, in this particular story, it felt to me like a script because it felt like a dialogue. It just began to come out like this dialogue, and I personally love cinema. I love telling stories with that sort of visual element. So as I was, I guess, developing that idea, um, I came across a client actually that wanted to help me. Um, well, they wanted me to help them. It was the Diocese of Dallas wanted me to help them with um, creating a event that could be an outreach to people outside of the church, young adults who were de-churched, who were not churched, and we decided to take a bit of a risk with that and to make it about grief and doubt. Of course, that was like the life that I was living at the time, but it also seemed to sort of meet the people who had left the church at that sort of place where they met, where they had taken that road off course. And so I presented them this idea of doing a short film about St. Maximilian Kolbe's life that was like this 12 Angry Men style short film.
Hmm.
And they decided to go for it and they gave me some money to do it. And so I guess miracle of miracles, it was actually a diocese that 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 patroned the art and kind of kicked off this whole thing. But
Wow.
yeah, we shot this short film. It was really profound. I think when we showed it, there was this sense that um, there was a we had struck oil, like spiritual oil. Anytime you're in a
Yeah.
room where you feel like everybody just got totally destroyed or traumatized by the Holy Spirit and they don't even know how to talk. Like, that's how it was when we showed the short film. And that was just done in a barn with, people with like bleached pajamas, not like a real movie. But there was a heart to it that I think everybody could feel and see. And it gave us enough momentum to find some people who wanted to invest in the movie. And so yeah, during that time, I wrote the feature length script because I knew there was something there, and then started to share it around, and immediately started having people giving me money without really without it really being something I was like trying to do per se. Um, and so it was just this very gradual kind of artistic movement from just internal to a few people knowing about it to this short film that a couple thousand people saw to writing the feature length script, and then ultimately to making a pitch deck and getting investors and going after it. But
Well,
I don't know exactly when I made the decision.
when did you start production? Like, when did you start auditioning actors and scoping out places to film? And it was filmed in Poland. Am I right?
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. So because of my background, I've been doing branding and marketing and digital ads for a long time, and so I've gotten to direct many short films. So I wasn't going from never doing anything like this before to doing something this huge. I had slowly built up a team of people, relationships with people, and experiences of being out beyond my out beyond the shore when it came to like creative projects and
Right.
collaborations with other people. So I knew, generally speaking, what it took. But yeah, I think that when I came back from Poland the first time, so I went there in 2022, and I had finished the first draft of the script, and I was there to write the second draft to really like make it as human and fleshy as I possibly could. And I think it was while I was there that I really felt the gravitas of the story. Like, this is not just a Catholic hero. This is a national Polish hero.
Yes.
Who am I as an American to sort of aspire to be the one to tell this story? But I I met a few different people there that seemed to really, really be ready to help. And I started putting together a budget. I think that was the first time I was like, I think I'm going to really do this, you know? And I called up my producer friend, Cecilia, who was working on The Chosen at the time. And I just was like, hey, here's the budget. I think that we could really do this. What do you think? You want to come and produce it with me? And she said yes, read the
Wow.
script and loved it. And that was kind of, I think, the real beginning of it becoming a real project.
Well, I want to underscore again this connection with your own pilgrimage and suffering. That art like this flows from a heart that has been pierced. You
Mm,
can't
mhm,
make art like this if you've not suffered, because this is a portrait of suffering. And it was evident to me from watching the film that those who were making it knew how to portray the descent into hell, because it wasn't theory to those who were making this movie.
mm,
In the process of making this film, like in the process of filming certain horrific scenes of suffering, how do you get through a day like on set and not just break down? Like you have to you have to be you're the man in charge of
yeah.
making this production happen, but I'm sure because the story came from your own pilgrimage of suffering, you can't just be detached and cold while you're filming these scenes of other people descending into hell. I imagine there were moments on set where you and others and the actors were breaking down because you're feeling it. I would imagine it gets to a point where you're no longer just acting. Like these guys are entering into something of the hell of being in a starvation bunker. How how do you know what I'm trying to ask here? Like, how do you
Yeah, yeah, I
humanly
do.
function when the movie is about descending into hell?
Yeah, and I mean, what you're saying is a true thing about a good movie, which is that the actors aren't acting. If the actors are acting, then you actually have a big problem.
Yeah.
They have to be actually fully embodying, experiencing, living all of the emotions that they're telling in order for it to be this genuine. And for us, that meant every person that was an actor had to be able to descend into hell. They had to be familiar with hell. They had to be able to re-evoke that experience and that emotion, totally in the moment, uh, as genuine as they had felt it when they were actually going through it. And that actually meant that for me as the director, I had to be the first one to be able to do that. And it's not uh, I think I guess one of the beautiful things about it was that because I had journeyed through that time myself and had been healed by God and by Kolbe, I knew that it was totally okay to
Mm.
go there. Like that was part of the whole experience of the suffering itself, was that when I was in the dark night of my own soul, it felt like Kolbe was stepping into my suffering and saying, yes, like this suffering is absolutely overwhelming, abysmal, but it's going to be okay. Like I will take your hand and I will show you how to pick up your cross and walk. And when you do, on the other side of it is heaven. There's hope even here. And so I would do meditations at the beginning of every day where I would bring the entire set. And mind you, this is a very hard thing to do on a shoot, on a commercial shoot where you've got hundreds of people who are participating. Um, Put all of them into this little cell, standing room only. Everybody's kind of like pushed up against each other. We would have incense going on the little, there's a little kind of step in the corner that some of the actors would be laying on during a lot of the scenes. And we called that the altar. And we'd put a candle on it and incense, and we would pray. And I would encourage them to sort of go back to sort of a time in their life, or memory in their life, where they were without hope or where they needed hope, and to really fully like embody it the same way that actors have to kind of remember these moments to sort of
Yes.
evoke that emotion. They have to be able to reach back at that memory and to bring it back to the physical world. So I'm asking questions like, what was your posture in that time? What did it smell like in the room? What did it feel like in your belly? Trying to sort of incarnate the emotion of that moment, that whatever people were experiencing. And then I would invite Kolbe or Jesus, depending on like the scene and depending on the day, whether I felt like which one I would go with. But I would invite them to sort of invite Kolbe into their bedroom or wherever they were, like whatever physical place that they remember being in during this sort of time of despair, and to just to be held by him. And that
Mm,
we
mm.
would just sort of imagine that, and then we would close down the prayer time, but create that same sort of sacred space, as if that was the beginning, was opening up that meditation. We're living in that space for the rest of the time until we closed at the end of the day. And people have asked me, I guess, considering just how intense these scenes were, like how we possibly could have not all been traumatized by it.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I think um, it actually was kind of the opposite of that. I think everybody, what they were experiencing in it was healing,
Wow.
in the same way that perhaps we were being. It was like the Israelites in the desert when they were being bitten by the snakes,
Right.
and poisoned by the snakes, and Moses put the snake up on the cross, and they were told to look at the snake, and therefore they would be healed. It was kind of the same thing, like looking at our suffering, embracing it fully, directly with each other, in each other's arms. Um, we were inviting God into that moment by that creative act. And everybody was experiencing God's presence, God's healing in ways that felt like I don't know, like drinking from a fire hydrant. Sometimes it was so overwhelming, the presence of God that we experienced in that cell. And yeah, at the end of the day, we didn't even have enough money to pay for proper dinner. Like we would shoot for 14 days, and all of the actors were on these starvation diets, so it was incredibly rigorous. And then they were having to do that without having actual food. So the rest of us joined them, and we would just have kind of brothy soup at the end of the day. And
Wow.
it was this like incredible experience of joy. Like getting that soup was like it was more satisfying than any other meal that I'd ever had. And not just because of the food, but because of the sort of warmth of everyone kind of reconnecting with each other after having gone through what we had gone through that day. So it's a very beautiful experience.
Astounding. So you are truly physically entering into yourself that suffering in the
Yeah, I
very
mean,
in the very in the very making of the movie. You are willing to go. I mean, you're not starving yourself for 14 days, obviously, without food and
yeah,
water, but you are having a minimal diet yourself to taste something of what these actors are going through in portraying what these real people went through.
yeah. I mean, I did a pretty like I I actually wore the costume during a lot of the days,
Fascinating.
um, because one, I thought if I'm in it like with them, they will feel safer to
Wow.
portray it. Um, and then secondarily, because it was a very cold place to be. We're in this cell that was not air conditioned. It was like a actual abandoned prison. And we have this big, cell window that you're seeing the light coming through. There's no like outside, right? There was no like barrier between the outside and inside, and it was like October, November in Poland, so it was getting pretty cold. And some of the shots, were getting wet. There's rain. So I went ahead and tried to be in the cell with them in whatever kind of discomfort I was asking them to go through, so that I could also know how far I was pushing them. Like if I was starting to get really like tight and cold, then I knew like it's time for us to take a break and
Right.
give everybody blankets and kind of warm up. And if not, and other people were sort of complaining, then they knew that I was I was pushing them, but I was willing to go as far as I was going myself too, and I wasn't asking them to do something I wasn't willing to do.
Anthony, I admire that so greatly, and it reminds me of people who have blessed me the most, like teachers I've had, and I seek to emulate their approach. Where I know as a teacher, when I'm trying to lead my students into an encounter with Jesus, that I can't just tell them about it. I have to go there myself. If I'm
Hmm.
asking my students to have the courage to look at really painful stuff in their own lives and open that to the Lord, I can't just tell them about that. I have to be
Right.
willing to go there myself. And
Yeah.
it sounds like that's what you were doing as the leader of this production. You're saying to everybody, I'm willing to go there myself.
Right. And that's what Colby was doing for them, right? Like he
Yes,
was
exactly.
volunteering to go there himself, to pick up their cross with them and to show them the way to heaven. I think that's part of what Jesus was doing for us in bearing the cross and bearing our human flesh. And I think ultimately, I'm so excited to like talk about this with you, just because I feel like so much of my own imagination as an artist is so shaped by theology of the body and by, I mean, frankly, even your own presentation of that. Um, and so I feel like this movie is very much like an ode to that. It's an ode to the incarnation and to the
Yes,
embodiment
yes.
of Christ's descent into hell and, I guess, the paschal mystery itself. So I would love to hear some of your own kind of thoughts about, how the movie sort of does that, and
Yeah,
what you saw in it. If
yeah.
you'd be open to maybe like
Happily,
sharing.
happily. The reason this movie touched me so deeply is number one, it's real storytelling. It's not just somebody's pious notions
Yeah,
that
right.
I mean, we've all seen these films about saints where somebody's pious imagination gets the best of them and you lose the humanity, you lose any real point of connection. The saints become some pious thing up on a cloud, a silver lined cloud, and you can't relate to it. You can't relate to it.
Right.
I could relate to this movie. Why? Because it's an invitation to have the courage to descend into my own hell. Right? The
Hmm.
gift of good storytelling is that you're watching somebody else's story, but it's connecting with some aspect of your own story. And so you relate, you enter in, there's a point of connection, there's a communion that's taking place. And
Mm,
also what makes for good art is being honest about the descent into hell, right? There is no saint who did not descend into hell, right? Every saint descends into hell. How do we know this? Because every saint is a true follower of Jesus Christ, and Jesus Christ descended into hell. Now, if you have a story or a movie that only descends into hell and keeps you there, well,
hmm.
that's a horror movie.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
That's and I don't know why. I mean, it's just some sadistic thing in us that we consider that entertainment. I guess at some level we're relating to the hell. Okay, I've been to hell. This is a movie about going to hell. But what makes something good art is it's not afraid to portray accurately the descent into hell, but it doesn't leave you there. It takes you also, it shows you the path to heaven. It gives you hope. And let it be known, the main message of this film is hope. That's the main message of this film. And it is so beautifully incarnate. If we're going to talk about theology of the body, right? Christianity is a theology of the body. Christianity is the religion of God in the flesh, who experiences what we experience in the flesh, who tastes the hell that we experience, but in absorbing that hell opens the way to heaven. And here's Maximilian Kolbe choosing freely to descend into this hell, and you portray it so vividly without sugarcoating it. It's human, it's relatable, the acting is superb, the writing is excellent, the cinematography is so good. And the side stories, we get to know different prisoners and some of their backstories, like Albert and the woman he loved, whom he left to go join the war. And that whole backstory, which I would love to ask you, I am assuming this came from your own imagination. This is your creative license. We don't know too much about the other people Maximilian actually suffered and died with, do we?
No, we don't. We all we know is the composition of the people that were in Auschwitz at the time of his death. And so piecing together likely stories of the types of people who were there was kind of what I was up to. I was compositing those. And Albert's was one that I felt like, there were plenty of POWs in the camp at the time. And I was just imagining, okay, you have young guys who were at war who joined up to help save Poland, who are now dying in this terrible way. These guys must have been like idealistic. They were just out of college. They're at that sort of high watermark of life that they haven't been completely like demoralized yet. And so I thought that this opening where we just, instead of opening on Auschwitz, we actually opened on like what this guy would have been like a year before the war, and then smash cut to his face, just totally destroyed, his hope completely gone a year later after joining up. And this sort of idea like, oh, I'm going to go out and I'm going to make a difference and I'm going to be a white knight and help save my country, and how just like destructive to the soul that idealism is when it kind of meets the I guess the hell of the world. And so yeah, I thought that was really compelling to me. I really wanted to start there, to sort of start with somebody who had already been destroyed, but to see a little bit of what that looked like before, enough for you to be able to relate to it.
Well done, Anthony. Well done. Well done. That story arc, Albert's story, made the movie for me. I knew in the opening scene when you're seeing him run out into the field with the woman he loves, I was like, oh, this is gonna be a good movie. This is gonna be this. I knew it from the opening scene. Like you weren't taking some hyper pious approach here. Like you're telling a real human story. And the way that comes around at the end, holy Jesus! Like that's when the tears just started flowing. I don't want to give any spoilers here, but the way Albert learns in the midst of abject horror to turn his suffering into love. That's when the tears just started flowing, how that all came around at the end of the movie. Well done, well written, well told, well filmed. There's a scene where Albert's character in the starvation bunker has a kind of fantasy dream where he's back with the woman he loves. And then you realize, the way you tell that part of the story where he's coming back to reality that he didn't get to be with that woman. He's really in this starvation bunker and he's dying, and how you filmed him just getting torn away from that dream, and he's running, and it was just so well done. It was really, really well done, Anthony. Yeah, I felt the fruit of your own sorrow there. I felt the fruit of your own sufferings. That good art comes from the heart. Good comes from a good heart, and a good heart is forged and shaped by descending into hell and finding real hope. And I'm so grateful to you, Anthony, for passing through that hell, being brave enough to pass through that hell, coming out the other side, because only such people can tell the true story of human life, which is always the paschal story. It's the story of each of our encounters with the cross, wrestling with the cross, unto the point of that utter cry from hell, my God, why have you abandoned me? And hoping against hope and coming out the other side and realizing, oh, this is what I'm supposed to be tasting when I'm praying the rosary. I'm not just supposed to be thumbing beads and repeating Hail Marys. I am supposed to be tasting and uniting my own sorrows with the Lord's sorrows, so that his light can shine on all of my joys and all of my sorrows as the pathway to glory. Well, there's the rosary right there, that the Lord's light, right, the luminous mysteries, would shine on my joy and sorrow as the path to glory. That's where you take us. You take us through, you shine the light on human joy and human sorrow as the pathway to glory. It's all of that. It's the light, it's the joy, it's the sorrow, it's the glory. And the way another scene that just brought me to tears, even more so the second time I saw the movie, was Kolbe in the starvation bunker describing his vision of heaven when Jesus and the Blessed Mother showed up. And I hope this isn't too much of a spoiler, but it was my favorite line in the movie was when Kolbe says he saw Jesus dancing the polka in the wedding feast of the Lamb. Like, yes, yes, yes. I loved it. I loved how personal that felt to Kolbe, right? Like to see Jesus dancing a Polish dance in the wedding feast of the Lamb. And again, I don't want to give a spoiler here. I'm just going to give a little hint that it comes around at the end, and that was a surprise to me. I thought the movie was over. I thought you had taken us on the journey you wanted to take us on, and I thought I was going to see the credits roll, and then all of a sudden there's like a little surprise. No, there's more. And I have never seen a depiction of heaven so beautifully and humanly portrayed as what you portrayed. And it was beautiful. It was beautifully human. Thank you, Anthony, for your beautiful humanity coming through the way you told the story. It was truly beautiful.
That. Yeah, no, I think I am so grateful that you enjoyed those particular moments. They're some of my favorites as well. I think that waking up from the dream was a real thing that I experienced often when I was in that kind of space of torment, waking up and having a panic attack because I thought, I had gotten married to her, and then, waking up and realizing that it was, all a dream, and that I was still in the cell. And so I remember writing it in the story, and just being like, I'm sorry that I have to show people this in a way. Like
Oh,
I almost felt to the audience like, yeah, I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna take you here. I'm gonna show you like the sweetest, most beautiful image of what life is supposed to look like, and then it's going to sort of it's going to end in horror. And I don't I'm not a fan of the emotions that that's going to be causing, but you have to understand that in order to
yeah.
understand um, what what Christ has victory over in the
Yes.
cell. Um,
Yes. Yes.
and so it's kind of like I think in some ways like the cross itself and its brutal physical torture is a lot harder for us to fully grapple with as a modern people, just because physical torture isn't what most people experience on the day to day. But this sort of mental anguish of having a life that you thought you were going to get to have, and having that life sort of taken from you by for whatever reason. I think that is something that everybody has experienced in some way, to some degree. And so that was sort of a window in, I thought, to the crucifixion. And I think what I was hoping to do as I went into like how does Kolbe respond to this sort of thing, that image of heaven, like the dream that he had of heaven, that's a real thing. He actually had a dream of heaven that was a big part of his um, his life, particularly the latter part of his life. When he was in Japan, he had this dream that he wouldn't tell anybody about, but that really, really changed him. And it was a dream about heaven where he got to see it and taste it and feel it. And I think um, in many ways, God was just preparing him for for his own kind of passion by giving him
Mm, mm.
that glimpse. And so I thought it would make sense for him to share that dream for the first time to the other people around him in the cell, as he's helping them to prepare for their end. And I also thought, Jesus gives us the image of a heaven, so what would he have dreamed?
Yeah.
I think a
Yeah.
Polish heaven sounds like
Yeah.
realistic, So
Yes. For
yeah.
absolutely for a poll, because the Lord speaks to us in the language of our own hearts, right?
Yeah.
We all have our own culture in our hearts. Like I know it
Hmm.
sounds weird to people, but Jesus will often show up in my prayer singing Bruce Springsteen or U2 songs, because that's the language of my heart. And
Hmm.
the Lord knows our hearts. So when you gave it such a Polish flavor, Kolbe's vision of heaven, again, you're relating vicariously, like, because it's so specific to Kolbe, it becomes
Hmm.
so specific for my heart as well. You know, we're
Yeah.
not crazy to have like Our Lady of Japan and Our Lady of the Americas and Our Lady of Czestochowa and Our Lady of Guadalupe. Like Mary shows up to people in their own culture, in their own cultural garb, right? The whole
Right.
idea of enculturating the gospel. In order for the gospel to be universal, it has to be also culturally specific, right? In
Right.
order for Jesus to save the whole human race, he also has to save the good thief right next to him, right?
Right.
It's that particular and universal, and how that all holds together. And this story is exactly that. The story you tell is a very particular Polish story, but it's because it's particular, it also extends universally. And I'll say this also about your own heart, in that dream sequence, Albert's dream sequence, that he did get married and then it all gets yanked away from him. I found it the most compelling scene in the movie. If I had to pick one, I mean, there's so many compelling scenes in the movie, but if I had to pick one, it would be that. And I knew, just because I know from life experience, you can't write a scene like that in theory. It can't be abstract. I knew it came from some genuine place in your heart, but I did not know. I did not know until you just shared that it is almost literal with what you did experience in your own sufferings and nightmares and waking up from them. And I just, again, I want to thank you, Anthony, for being so vulnerable, for exposing your own heart so vulnerably. It is a tremendous risk for an artist to be that vulnerable and to put his heart out there so nakedly. And I want to say I saw your beautiful heart in this film, and I'm so grateful to you for being that vulnerable. That's what makes good art, when it comes from the heart. And good art from the heart has the capacity to reach other people's hearts. And it reached mine, brother. And I feel a deep communion with you in this work of art. And it makes me so excited to rejoice with you in the communion of the saints and the wedding feast of the Lamb for eternity. Because I got just a little glimpse of the unique, unrepeatable mystery of Anthony's heart through this work of art. And I can't wait to see the beam of glory that you reveal in eternity, my brother, truly.
It's an amazing thing to hear from somebody that has been a teacher for me and somebody that I respect so much. Yeah, really, like the Theology of the Body, I think, is one of those. It's one of those foundational underpinnings of my whole being. Really, it's so deeply kind of installed in there since I started hearing about it in middle school and high school, and I can't think outside of it as an artist. Like everything has become the poetry of sacrament, and so yeah, this movie in so many ways is like an ode to that. It's my first big movie, but I think it's a film where, even though the production level is, we only had $500,000 to make it. So
what, you made this movie for $500,000?
Yeah, yeah, we did. We were living like missionaries. Everybody's getting paid.
I'm thinking, like, where did Anthony get the money to do this so well? Like, I was thinking a minimum of like $5 million to make this movie. You did this movie on $500,000. That is all the more astounding that you pulled this off.
Yeah, no, it is.
My word.
It's everything about it was miraculous. I mean, with that budget, in order to do something like this, every single day we needed a miracle to come through in terms of like somebody showing up that would bail us out of a problem, or a location to just sort of materialize out of thin air. You can't solve problems without money, right? Like that's the big thing. So if you don't have money to throw at problems, then you just have to sort of wait for God's generosity to show up, and it did. But I was going to say that I think what was accomplished, I think, was really accomplished particularly because I started in my own dark night of the soul to make art, to meet God in poetry, and that instinct is like such a it's such a TOB, instinct,
Yes.
to find a way to open your imagination to the Lord, and to like try to suck down that nectar into the sort of physical world around you in some way. And I feel like it's also amazingly shaped by it because Maximilian Kolbe was a contemporary of John Paul II.
Yes.
And
yes.
The last time that we talked, we spoke on a Instagram live where you kind of imagined the ashes of Kolbe and Auschwitz sort of coming down into the atmosphere around Krakow, where JP2 was speaking. And as I was thinking about it since then, I really thought, this story seems to me to be like a piece of the puzzle for why and where that insight came from for John Paul
Yes.
II. This story has such an incarnational kind of drive to it, and a rhyme with Christ's story, that to see it lived out by somebody who put their own body on the line for the sake of the gospel and for the sake of a brother, it makes sense that like shaped the underpinning of JP2's vision for the world that led to his teaching that he was able to give us. So anyway, it just feels
Well
really
said.
profound.
Yeah, well said.
To get
Another one of my favorite scenes in the movie is when the ashes are floating in the window, and they land, and they're kind of sooty and oily, and you left one of those ashes on Kolbe's nose for a future scene. And initially I was like, what's that black mark on Kolbe's nose? Oh.
Mhm.
And I've often reflected on young Karol Wojtyła, living in Krakow with the ashes of his friends and countrymen hovering in the air from nearby Auschwitz. And it was that horror, just as you're saying, it was that horror in which he was forged. And while many of his contemporaries, Wojtyła's contemporaries, concluded that life was absurd, Maximilian Kolbe, just a few miles down the road, is offering his life. And this young Polish priest would become the Pope who canonizes this man all those years later. And again, when all the contemporaries of Wojtyła were concluding life is absurd, this young Polish priest presses in and says, what is it that can lead human beings to drink from the dregs of raw evil when we are made for such greatness? We are made for such greatness. And there is no doubt, as he's pressing into these questions about good and evil, his theology of the body is forged from that place. And he concludes that at the root of all culture, is the relationship of man and woman. And the culture of life or the culture of death is determined by whether or not man and woman will love each other rightly. It's a bold, bold, bold conclusion from a man who lived through those horrors. And you are absolutely right to draw those connections between JP2 and Kolbe. And I as a man who's given my life to the teaching of JP2, speaking to a man who's given his life to telling the story of Kolbe, to hear that John Paul's theology of the body informed your art is incredibly encouraging to me. I have known since the beginning of doing this work that theology of the body would serve to bring about a renewal of the arts within the church. And to see this as a fruit of that is so encouraging to me, Anthony. Thank you for your yes to that.
It's just an amazing thing to get to be here as two sort of devotees and to sort of see a little bit of how our work has, perhaps yours has influenced mine, and how Kolbe has influenced JP2's, and this
well,
sort of
now your
heavenly
work is
cycle,
influencing me, brother. Your art is influencing me. Your art is blessing me. It's a two-way street,
Yeah.
and that's a beautiful thing. That is a.
Maybe someday there will be like a Christopher West talk out there on the movie, and it'll get popular enough to warrant that or something,
This is the beginning. This is the beginning of that. I hope many, many people are going to be watching this. And speaking of which, what do people need to do? We're gonna air this before the movie premieres, September 12th. Am I right?
That's right.
Is the premiere? What do our viewers need to do to help get the word out about this movie? Help us to help them to help you.
Yeah, this is I'm glad you asked that. It's a very important thing. I think that this moment is a very important moment in cinema and in kind of the Catholic renaissance that we're all hoping for and wanting to give birth to right now. And basically, you have to think about a movie as both an economic reality as well as art, and art to sort of be entertained by or to consume. But it's also a part of sort of the I guess the political realm in a way by being an economic thing. Specifically, what people need to understand is that if they wait to see it in streaming, or if they say I will wait to see it in theaters maybe later on, after I've heard 4 or 5 more times people telling me I should see it, then it will have failed by that point, because every movie, especially when it's an indie movie that's low budget like this, doesn't have the sort of studio backing to have legs to just keep on kind of blasting it out. It's all made by everybody, distributors, people in the industry. They just look at Friday and Saturday's box office. That's it. Nothing else matters. So don't wait. Go at this point. You will be able to look up and kind of see if it's coming to your theater near you. If it's not, then call the theater and ask them to carry it. Those calls actually really do matter. But if it is, buy a ticket for Friday or Saturday. It's your vote for Catholic film to be made, for more of this to happen. And if you don't vote, then you can't complain about the next terrible saint movie that Hollywood makes that's cheesy or that doesn't have a true kind of presentation of the gospel. So that's I guess that's how I would close it, is like buy a ticket to go to the movie on specifically Friday or Saturday night, the 12th or the 13th.
Okay, you heard it, everybody. September 12th or 13th, go out to the theaters to see this movie, to be part of a new renaissance in Catholic art. This movie is so, so good. It is so worth supporting. Anthony, I'm so grateful to you, brother. I pray a great success for this movie. It already is a great success, but I pray the financial rewards that will allow you to keep making good movies, brother. And this is just, this is your first feature film. So I can't wait. I can't wait. If your first feature film is this good, I can't wait to see what's coming next. So you heard it, everybody. Go out September 12th or 13th to see this movie. If it's not in a theater near you, call your theater to request it's coming. And there's a website they can go to request it, right? In their local.
So we just finished up the crowdfunding campaign where people could actually, sign up in order to host a screening. That is now done.
That's done. Okay.
So from here on out, basically, those people did the hard work of making sure that it gets into theaters.
Great.
And now pretty much every sort of city, every metro area is going to have it, because of the work that these 400 amazing people did. And we sold about 40,000 tickets on that, raised about $800,000.
Awesome.
So it's an amazing success. It's like historic. Nobody has done anything like this before as a crowdfunding campaign for like theatrical release. But this is just the beginning. And now all of them have opened up theaters that are going to make it so that anybody can just go and show up to the theater, buy a ticket normally, like we do for any movie that we get to.
Brilliant. We're going to end with the trailer. Anthony, thank you so much for being with me. You're a blessing to me, brother. Keep going.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me.
You bet.
Come on. Come on.
What are we here to do? To kill? No. We are here to break the will of Poland so the Reich may reset the bone. You know the rules. I will choose 10 of you to starve until the missing prisoner is found or until death. This is fun.
I got children now!
I can take his place.
I'm Brother Paul!
Don't leave me. Don't leave him, Albert.
Where have you been these past 2 years? To believe in heaven or God? Certainly you couldn't have been living in this world.
Himmelsrecht. We have our voices. We must hold on to our hope. Don't give up. Finish the race. This is not possible. Tell me, how are they still alive? I believe that somehow, on the other side of this savage life, everyone who has gone before us is watching, beholding this moment.